The Valerian Empire's exploration vessel, Star Seeker, tore through the fabric of space-time as it dropped from hyperspace with a thunderous flash of blue energy. Captain Thylos gripped his command chair as the ship's artificial gravity compensated for the violent deceleration. Around him, the bridge hummed with activity as his crew ran system diagnostics and powered up their long-range sensors. Thylos activated his personal console and pulled up the ancient survey files. The holographic display flickered to life, showing grainy images captured 500,000 years ago. His ancestors had been thorough in their documentation. Images of a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star, primitive bipedal creatures huddled around flickering fires, crude stone tools scattered across grasslands where early humans struggled to survive. The survey report was clear and dismissive. Species classification, pre-intelligent hominids. Technology level, Stone Age. Threat assessment, none. Recommendation: monitor from distance, return in 500,000 standard cycles to assess evolutionary progress or confirm extinction. Now, as Thylos gazed through the bridge's massive viewing screen at the star system before them, something felt wrong. The space around the third planet should have been empty except for its single natural satellite. Instead, his tactical officer's screens lit up with dozens of artificial signatures. Commander Mira bent over her sensor array, her 4 eyes widening in disbelief. "Captain, I'm reading massive metallic structures in orbit around the third planet. They're huge. Some of these installations are larger than our capital ships." Thylos moved to stand beside her, watching the data cascade across her screens. Ring-shaped stations rotated slowly around Earth, their surfaces bristling with communication arrays and docking bays. Smaller structures moved between them in organized patterns: supply ships, construction vessels, patrol craft. "Run a full spectrum analysis," Thylos ordered. "I want to know what we're looking at." The ship's powerful sensors reached across millions of kilometers, painting a detailed picture that made Thylos's blood run cold. The planet itself pulsed with energy signatures. Massive cities covered entire continents, their lights visible, even from this distance. Atmospheric processors worked in the upper atmosphere, fine-tuning the world's climate with precision that rivaled Valerian terraforming technology, but it was the ships that truly terrified him. "Captain," Commander Mira's voice cracked with tension, "multiple contacts approaching our position. They just appeared on our sensors. No jump signatures, no engine burns. They were just suddenly there." Thylos spun toward the main screen. Where empty space had existed moments before, sleek vessels now hung in formation around the Star Seeker. The ships were angular and predatory, their dark hulls seeming to bend light around them. No running lights, no identification markings, just silent death floating in the void. "How many?" Thylos asked, though he could already count them himself. 12. "Vessels in immediate proximity," Mira reported. "But, Captain, our long-range sensors are detecting dozens more throughout the system. They're everywhere." The human ships were unlike anything in Valerian databases. They moved with impossible grace, adjusting their positions without visible propulsion. Their hulls incorporated materials that seemed to absorb sensor waves, making accurate readings nearly impossible. Thylos watched in fascination and growing fear as the lead human vessel rotated to face them directly. Weapon ports opened along its hull with mechanical precision, revealing energy cannons that hummed with barely contained power. "Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Kex from the weapons station. "They're targeting us, all of them. Weapon locks confirmed across multiple firing solutions." The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of monitors and the whisper of recycled air. Thylos felt the weight of 500,000 years pressing down on him. The primitive creatures his ancestors had dismissed as barely sentient had somehow achieved technological advancement that defied every known law of evolution and development. "They're targeting systems," Mira whispered. "Captain, they've locked onto us through our defensive screens. Our stealth generators are running at full power, but they're tracking us like we're broadcasting on all frequencies." Thylos studied the tactical display. The human formation wasn't just surrounding them. It was a perfect combat deployment. Every angle of approach was covered, every possible escape route blocked. These weren't random patrol ships that had stumbled across an intruder. This was a coordinated military response that had been executed with frightening efficiency. "Send a message to the High Council on the emergency channel," Thylos ordered, his voice steady despite the terror building in his chest. "Priority Alpha. Tell them the survey world has developed beyond all projections. The primitives have become something we never anticipated." He paused, watching as more human ships materialized from the depths of space, their numbers growing by the minute. "Tell them we may have made a terrible mistake by coming back." The emergency council session lasted 3 rotations aboard the Valerian flagship Eternal Dominion. High Councillor Vex paced the circular chamber while holographic displays showed the impossible readings from the Sol system. Half the council argued for immediate military action, while others demanded more information before making any decisions. Finally, Councillor Thane's voice cut through the debate. "We follow standard protocol. 1 diplomatic vessel, full ceremonial approach, universal peace codes. If these creatures have truly achieved spaceflight, we treat them as any emerging species." The Peacebringer was the pride of the Valerian diplomatic fleet. Its hull gleamed with polished metal inlays that formed intricate patterns visible from great distances, a universal symbol of peaceful intent recognized across the galaxy. Captain Zelia had commanded diplomatic missions to 47 worlds, each one following the same careful procedures that had kept galactic peace for millennia. As her ship approached the outer edge of the Sol system, Zelia activated the standard greeting protocols. The ship's powerful transmitters broadcast the universal friendship message in 17 different galactic languages, each transmission carefully timed and repeated according to established diplomatic codes. "Broadcasting peace intentions on all frequencies," reported Communications Officer Kelth, his tentacles dancing across the control interfaces. "Standard diplomatic approach, full ceremony protocols active." Zelia nodded, watching the tactical display as her ship moved slowly toward the 3rd planet. According to protocol, she should receive a response within several hours, as the primitive species scrambled to decode at least one of the 17 languages. Most emerging civilizations managed to work out basic mathematical concepts from the transmissions, leading to simple communication. Instead, her ship's proximity alarms began screaming. "Contact!" shouted Tactical Officer Wren. "Multiple vessels, close proximity, no approach signatures detected." Zelia spun toward the main viewer and felt her breath catch. Where empty space had existed seconds before, 12 human warships now hung in perfect formation around the Peacebringer. They hadn't jumped in, hadn't accelerated from distant positions. They had simply appeared like ghosts materializing from another dimension. The human vessels were beautiful and terrifying. Their hulls curved in impossible ways, surfaces that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, while maintaining solid form. No visible weapons, but Zelia's tactical systems screamed warnings about energy buildups throughout each ship. "Captain," Kelth's voice trembled. "Incoming transmission." The response should have been crude, broken attempts at communication using mathematical concepts. Instead, a calm human voice spoke in perfect High Valerian, using grammatical structures that took most species decades to master. "Valerian vessel, Peacebringer. This is Admiral Dongmin Park of the Terran Defense Fleet. Welcome back to Sol." "System, we've been expecting your arrival." The bridge fell completely silent. Zelia felt ice forming in her veins as the implications crashed over her. The human had used the formal greeting reserved for returning friends, not the protocols for first contact. Worse, he had spoken their language with native fluency, complete with proper tonal inflections that indicated high social rank. "How?" whispered Kelth, his voice barely audible. "Captain, we only transmitted our greeting 17 minutes ago. No species has ever decoded Valerian that quickly. It's linguistically impossible." Zelia stared at the tactical display as more human ships appeared around them. Not just military vessels now, but massive construction ships and strange craft that defied easy classification. Some seemed to bend light around themselves. Others pulsed with energy signatures that registered off the scale of Valerian sensors. The lead human ship moved closer, and Zelia could see details that made her skin crawl. The hull wasn't just metal. It was alive somehow, surfaces rippling with patterns that suggested organic integration with mechanical systems. Weapon ports opened and closed like breathing, while sensor arrays tracked her ship with predatory precision. "Admiral Park to Peacebringer," the human voice continued with unsettling politeness. "Please adjust your heading to follow our escort. Vessels, we have prepared appropriate facilities for your diplomatic mission." 3 sleek human ships moved into formation around the Peacebringer, their positions clearly indicating an escort rather than a threat. But Zelia noticed that each escort ship carried enough firepower to vaporize her vessel instantly. "Captain," Wren reported from Tactical, "their weapons are unlike anything in our databases. Energy patterns suggest they're using technologies we don't understand, controlled fusion reactions, quantum field manipulation, possibly even exotic matter containment." As they flew deeper into the system, Zelia watched in growing horror as Earth revealed its true nature. The planet wasn't just inhabited, it was transformed. Massive orbital rings rotated around the world, each one large enough to house millions of beings. Space elevators stretched from the surface into the orbital constructions, while streams of traffic flowed between installations in carefully organized patterns. The moon had been completely converted into what appeared to be a military shipyard. Dozens of human warships hung in construction cradles, while others underwent repairs and upgrades. The scale of operations suggested an industrial capacity that rivaled the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. "Communication analysis complete. Captain," Kelth reported quietly. "The human transmission contained linguistic markers indicating they've been monitoring our communications for an extended period. Their vocabulary includes recent political terms, technological classifications, even personal names of current council members." Zelia felt her world tilting. The humans hadn't just learned their language in minutes. They had been studying Valerian culture for years, possibly decades. This wasn't first contact. This was a carefully orchestrated meeting with a species that already knew everything about them. The Valerian shuttle, Harmony's Wing, detached from the Peacebringer with a soft hiss of hydraulics. Captain Zelia gripped the passenger restraints as the small craft began its descent toward Earth, flanked by 2 human escort fighters that moved with impossible grace through the upper atmosphere. Through the shuttle's transparent aluminum viewport, Earth revealed itself in all its transformed glory. What should have been a naturally evolved world showed signs of massive engineering projects that defied comprehension. Continent-sized cities stretched across land masses, their gleaming towers reaching into the clouds like metallic forests. Rivers had been redirected into perfect geometric patterns that channeled water through urban centers with mathematical precision. "By the Ancient Ones," breathed Communications Officer Kelth, pressing his face against the viewport. "Look at those structures." Zelia followed his gaze to see massive orbital elevators stretching from the planet's surface into space. The cables were impossibly thin, yet clearly capable of supporting enormous loads. Cargo pods raced up and down the lengths like mechanical, insects carrying resources between the surface and the orbital installations, but it was the atmospheric processes that truly amazed her. Enormous machines floated in the upper atmosphere, their crystalline cores glowing with contained energy. They were actively reshaping Earth's climate in real time, adjusting temperature, humidity, and atmospheric composition with the precision of a master artist painting on a cosmic canvas. "Those are terraforming devices," whispered Tactical Officer Wren. "But they're not terraforming a dead world. They're fine-tuning an already living planet. The level of control required is beyond anything we've achieved." The shuttle touched down on a landing pad that extended from the side of a tower stretching kilometers into the sky. As the engines powered down, Zelia could see human figures approaching across the platform. They moved with confident strides, showing no fear or uncertainty despite meeting an alien species for the first time. Admiral Hyunwoo Kim stood waiting at the base of the shuttle ramp, flanked by a full honor guard of human soldiers. Their uniforms were crisp and military, but their weapons were unlike anything in Valerian databases. Energy rifles that hummed with barely contained power, personal shields that shimmered around each soldier like soap bubbles made of light. "Captain Zelia," Admiral Kim said as she descended the ramp, his voice warm but carrying undertones of absolute authority. "Welcome to Earth. I trust your journey was comfortable." The Admiral's perfect pronunciation of her name sent chills down Zelia's spine. She had never transmitted that information, yet he spoke it as if they were old friends meeting after a long separation. The delegation was escorted through the massive tower's interior, and Zelia marveled at the integration of technology and organic design. The walls pulsed with living circuits that seemed part plant, part machine. Automated systems responded to the human's presence with seamless efficiency, while holographic displays provided information that updated in real time as they passed. The formal reception hall was a marvel of engineering and artistry. The ceiling was transparent, providing a view of Earth's orbital installations rotating slowly overhead. Gravity generators created localized fields that allowed beings of different physiologies to move comfortably, while the atmosphere was carefully regulated to accommodate various respiratory requirements. Dr. So-Young Lee approached with a warm smile, carrying a data tablet that glowed with scrolling information. Her movements were precise and confident, like someone who had been preparing for this moment for years. "Captain Zelia, I'm Dr. Lee, Earth's chief xenoanthropologist," she said, extending her hand in what Zelia recognized as a human greeting gesture. "I've been looking forward to meeting you since our deep space monitoring stations detected your approach 3 years ago." The words hit Zelia like a physical blow. 3 years. The humans had known about Valerian presence in their space for 3 years and had said nothing, done nothing to reveal themselves until now. "We've been preparing for this reunion ever since," Dr. Lee continued, her smile never wavering. Zelia's universal translator caught the word choice immediately. Reunion implied a meeting between parties who had encountered each other before. The implications were staggering and terrifying. General Min-Ho Choi stepped forward, activating a massive holographic display that filled the center of the reception hall. The three-dimensional map showed detailed star charts of Valerian space, complete with shipping routes, military installations, and recent territorial expansions. "Your mining operations in the Kepler sector are quite impressive," General Choi said casually, manipulating the display to zoom in on specific installations. "The asteroid processing facilities you established last year have increased your resource extraction by 37%, and your recent expansion into the Vega system shows remarkable strategic planning." Zelia felt her legs go weak. The information General Choi was displaying was classified at the highest levels of Valerian military command. Mining reports, territorial, expansion plans, strategic resource allocations, data that should have been impossible for any outside species to obtain. "How do you know this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Dr. Lee's expression remained pleasant and welcoming, but her eyes held depths that spoke of knowledge far beyond what any species should possess about their neighbors. "We've had considerable time to develop extensive observation methods," she said, her tone suggesting that 500,000 years had not been spent in primitive development, but in careful, patient watching and learning. The reception hall suddenly felt less like a diplomatic meeting and more like a carefully orchestrated demonstration of power, designed to show the Valerians exactly how much humanity knew about their civilization and how long they had been watching from the shadows. The briefing room was located deep within the Earth facility, its walls lined with gleaming metal that seemed to absorb sound and light. Captain Zelia and her delegation sat around a curved table that hummed with embedded technology, while holographic displays flickered to life around them like digital ghosts awakening from slumber. Dr. Ji-Hoon Wang entered carrying a crystalline data core that pulsed with stored information. His movements were precise and deliberate, like a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. Behind him walked 2 human assistants, wheeling in additional equipment that Zelia couldn't identify, devices that looked part computer, part biological, scanner, part something else entirely. "Before we proceed with formal negotiations," Dr. Wang began, placing the data core into a central projector, "I believe you should understand the full scope of our relationship." The holographic display exploded to life, filling the room with 3-dimensional maps, documents, and recordings. Zelia gasped as she recognized official Valerian government seals, military classifications, and personal communications between high-ranking officials. The level of detail was impossible. Financial records from the Treasury Ministry, private conversations between council members, even personal diary entries from Emperor Vex himself. This is the complete archive of Valerian civilization, Dr. Wang explained, manipulating the display to show different categories of information: political structures, technological developments, cultural traditions, individual psychological, profiles of your leadership. We've been collecting this information for quite some time. Communications Officer Kelth leaned forward, his multiple eyes wide with disbelief. These documents are classified beyond top secret. Some of them were created just last month. How could you possibly have access to conversations that took place in the Emperor's private chambers? Dr. Wang smiled with the patience of a teacher, explaining simple concepts to confused students. We've developed rather sophisticated monitoring techniques over the centuries: quantum entanglement communication intercepts, microscopic surveillance, drones that exist in dimensional spaces adjacent to your reality, biological infiltration units that can mimic any species down to the cellular level. The display shifted to show technical schematics of Valerian spacecraft, weapon systems, and defensive installations. Every detail was perfect, down to the molecular composition of hull plating and the quantum frequencies used in their faster-than-light drives. But this is just one civilization, Dr. Wang continued, his tone becoming more serious. Let me show you something more comprehensive. The room darkened as new displays activated around them. 17 different star maps appeared, each one showing a different species' territory, technology, and cultural development. Zelia recognized some of them: the crystalline Veltar from the Proxima sector, the gas giant dwelling Aryans, the machine hybrid Nexus Collective. 17 species have visited Earth in the past century, Dr. Wang explained, walking between the floating displays like a curator in a cosmic museum. Each one had policies similar to yours: survey primitive worlds, return later to check, on development, establish contact with emerging civilizations. He paused at one display showing a beautiful world covered in floating cities connected by bridges of crystallized light. The Veltar arrived 83 years ago. Their scouts spent 6 months cataloging human development before returning home. Interestingly, their government decided against formal contact after reviewing the reports. Another display showed a massive gas planet with floating biological structures that served as cities. The Aryans sent their contact fleet 57 years ago. They also chose to postpone diplomatic relations indefinitely. One by one, Dr. Wang highlighted each species' interaction with Earth. Everyone had followed the same pattern: initial contact, detailed observation, hasty retreat, and a policy of deliberate avoidance. These are our cultural preservation sites, Dr. Wang said, activating a new set of displays that made Zelia's skin crawl. Perfect recreations of alien homeworlds appeared around them, complete with atmospheric conditions, gravitational fields, and even living ecosystems. Each facility houses complete biological samples, historical archives, technological databases, and cultural artifacts from species we've encountered. The pause before encountered hung in the air like a threat. Captain Zelia noticed that several of the preserved worlds showed signs of recent activity: fresh biological samples, updated cultural records, recently acquired technological specifications. How do you obtain these samples? She asked. Though part of her already knew the answer would be terrifying, Dr. Wang's smile never wavered. We're very thorough in our research methods. Colonel Taejin Nam stepped forward from the shadows where he had been standing silently. His military bearing was unmistakable, and the weapons integrated into his uniform suggested capabilities far beyond conventional warfare. Captain Zelia, he said quietly, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to delivering life-changing news. Your empire currently borders 47 human-controlled systems. We've been expanding our territory, while your species has been occupied with other matters. The holographic displays shifted again, showing current galactic political boundaries. What should have been Valerian space now showed significant human presence, military outposts, mining operations, civilian colonies, and massive industrial complexes. The expansion had been systematic and strategic, targeting resource-rich systems and strategic choke points. "We've established trade agreements with your neighboring species," Colonel Nam continued. "The hegemony of Keth now purchases 60% of their military hardware from human manufacturers. The Spiral Confederacy has signed exclusive mining rights treaties with Terran corporations. Your traditional allies are becoming our economic partners." Tactical Officer Wren's voice cracked as he spoke. "You're not a newly spacefaring species. You're an established galactic power that's been operating in secret for decades." Dr. Wang nodded approvingly. "Longer than that, actually. We've been active in galactic affairs for over 2 centuries. We simply chose not to announce our presence until we were adequately prepared." The room fell into heavy silence as the implications settled over the Valerian delegation. They hadn't come to make first contact with a primitive species. They had walked into a meeting with a civilization that had been watching, learning, and expanding while keeping its true nature hidden from the galaxy. Captain Zelia realized that every other species that had visited Earth had reached the same terrifying conclusion. Humanity wasn't emerging into galactic civilization. It was already there, waiting in the shadows, more advanced and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The final meeting took place in the highest tower of the Earth facility, a room with walls made entirely of transparent materials that offered a breathtaking view of the transformed planet below. Captain Zelia could see the orbital rings rotating slowly overhead, massive construction projects reshaping continents, and streams of spacecraft moving between installations like blood flowing through cosmic veins. President Subin O entered the chamber with the quiet confidence of someone who held the fate of civilizations in her hands. She was smaller than Zelia had expected, but her presence filled the room with an authority that made the Valerian delegation instinctively straighten in their seats. Behind her walked General Dong Hyun-yoon, his military uniform adorned with medals that represented conflicts the Valerians had never heard of. "Captain Zelia," President O began, taking her seat across from the alien delegation, "I trust our facilities have been adequate for your stay, and that Dr. Wang's presentations have been educational." The word educational carried weight that made Zelia's skin crawl. What they had learned over the past few days had shattered every assumption about humanity, about galactic politics, and about the true balance of power in their corner of the universe. "Before we conclude our discussions," President O continued, "I want to make humanity's position absolutely clear. The galaxy has changed dramatically during your 500,000-year absence. Earth is no longer the primitive world your ancestors catalogued and dismissed." She gestured toward the massive viewing wall, where holographic displays began showing star maps in real time. Zelia watched in growing horror as human territories lit up across the galaxy. Not just the 47 systems Colonel Nam had mentioned, but hundreds of installations, mining operations, and colonies scattered across dozens of sectors. "We now control territory that directly borders your empire," President O stated, manipulating the display to highlight the border regions between human and Valerian space. "Our expansion has been systematic and strategic. We've established contact with your neighboring species, formed trade partnerships, and created defensive alliances that span multiple star systems." The display zoomed in on specific locations where human and Valerian territories touched. Military installations, heavily fortified and bristling with weapons technology that the Valerians couldn't identify. Massive industrial complexes that suggested manufacturing capabilities on a scale that rivaled the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. President O leaned forward, her dark eyes never leaving Captain Zelia's face. "You now have 2 options, and I want you to understand both completely before making your decision." The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of advanced technology and the distant vibration of massive machinery reshaping the world below. "Option 1, President O said, her voice calm but carrying absolute authority. "Join the Terran Commonwealth as equal partners. Share your knowledge and technology with us, and receive our protection and support in return. Your empire would maintain its independence while benefiting from human technological advancement and military protection." She paused, allowing the words to sink in before continuing. Option 2. Return to your space and pretend this meeting never occurred. Continue your expansion and development as you see fit, with no formal relationship between our civilizations. General. Yoon stepped forward, his expression grave. "However, you must understand that isolation is no longer possible. We know you exist, we know your capabilities, and we know your territorial boundaries. Our expansion will continue regardless of your decision." The holographic display shifted to show projected human expansion over the next century, territory after territory, lighting up as human influence spread across the galaxy like a slow-moving wave. Several of those projected territories were currently under Valerian control. "Your choice," General Yoon added quietly, "will determine whether that expansion occurs through cooperation or through conquest." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Captain Zelia realized that humanity wasn't offering a choice at all. They were presenting an ultimatum disguised as diplomacy. Communications. Officer Kelth shifted nervously in his seat. "What guarantees do we have that joining your Commonwealth would preserve Valerian autonomy?" President O smiled, but the expression held no warmth. "The same guarantees we've provided to the 17 other species that have made similar agreements. Over the past century, complete cultural preservation, technological advancement, and protection from external threats." The mention of 17 other species sent chills through the Valerian delegation. Every species that had visited Earth and then mysteriously withdrew from galactic affairs had apparently joined humanity's growing empire. "And if we choose isolation?" Zelia asked, though she already suspected the answer. General Yoon consulted a holographic display that appeared at his wrist. "Our projections indicate that human expansion will reach your core territories within the next 50 standard years. At that point, contact will be unavoidable." As the meeting concluded, President O stood and moved to the viewing wall. "Captain Zelia, your ancestors made a decision 500,000 years ago to dismiss humanity as a primitive species not worth their attention. That dismissal gave us exactly what we needed: time to prepare." She turned back to face the delegation, her expression serious. "While your species and countless others focused on immediate concerns, we spent 500 millennia getting ready for this moment. We studied every species that visited us, learned from every contact, and prepared for the day when the galaxy would come looking for the primitives they had left behind." The shuttle flight back to the Star Seeker was conducted in complete silence. Captain Zelia stared out at the transformed Earth, watching construction projects that spanned continents and orbital installations that dwarfed anything in Valerian space. As their ship prepared to depart, she finally understood the terrible truth. Humanity's rapid advancement hadn't been natural evolution, it had been methodical preparation. For 500,000 years, while other species pursued their own agendas and forgot about the primitive world in an unremarkable star system, humans had been watching, learning, and getting ready. They had turned their apparent weakness into their greatest strength, using their dismissal by advanced species as camouflage, while they developed technologies and strategies that now gave them dominance over those same civilizations. The question facing the galaxy was no longer whether humanity was ready to join galactic civilization. The question was whether galactic civilization was ready for humanity, and from what Zelia had seen, the answer was a terrifying no. The end.